This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your go-to Iowa-based sports show, hosted by the one and only Elliot Clough.
What's up, Cedar Valley? Hello to the Hawkeye State. This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your Iowa-based sports show, hosted by me, Elliot Clough, UNI insider for Town Square Media. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at Elliot Clough. Recording on this Monday evening, UNI Basketball Media Day was today, and Kevin Lehman, who you will definitely recognize from college basketball broadcasts all across the Missouri Valley, kind enough to join us this evening. Kevin, we appreciate you taking some time tonight.
Elliot, my pleasure. I told Ben Jacobson it's 3 weeks away from college basketball tipping off, and I saw a bit of panic in his face. He says, only 3 weeks? I said, yeah, 3 weeks from tonight is when all college basketball tips off.
Oh, yeah. He's got a young team, so can't blame him for being a little nervous. I'm sure he would love a little bit more time to develop some of those things or some of those guys. But and we'll get to that. But first thing I want to talk about this evening, Kevin, is the big thing from today, which is Austin Phyfe, his health. And while it was news, it wasn't news because we're still in limbo here. And just thoughts there on Austin Phyfe and his health and I think we're all hoping that he comes back and gets to play a little bit of basketball before his college time in college comes to an end.
Well, first of all, our thoughts and prayers are out to not only Austin but his family. He's really had a rough go. Remember his freshman year, he had that other disease where he was passing out when he stood up, so he had a redshirt that year. And then, of course, dealt with COVID last season, could only play in 4 or 5 minute spurts, and now dealing with some on his lungs, some blood clots, and that's really dangerous because as Austin told me, the doc said those blood clots dislodges, it could kill you instantly. So first of all, we want him to be healthy, and obviously as Panther fans, we would love to see him come back, and for him too to have a great senior year. But it looks like maybe 2 months from now, around Christmas, first of the year, they may have a decision whether he can be able to play and start in a league season.
Right. And of course, like we both said, we both hope for that for him as a young man first. But I mean, additionally, I know you've had some time to talk with Austin, I'm sure. Great kid. I could not be a bigger fan of Austin Phyfe, and obviously his dad and his family have been really great for the UNI program. And in regards to the on-court topic of UNI basketball and Phyfe playing, what's the ceiling for this UNI team with Phyfe versus without Phyfe to you, Kevin?
Well, I think if you put Austin Phyfe at that 5 spot and he is 100% healthy, type of player we saw 2 years ago, they have the best center in the league. Without that, they're doing a lot of inexperience in there. And whether it's going to be Henry in there or Betts, it looks like there's some different options. And those guys are two different looks for you, but Fife's ability to pass the basketball and to score in the low block. He's a guy that's going to draw double teams, which I think this team needs with the absence of AJ Green and those other shooters they had around him. Noah Carter, of course, gone, but they're going to really miss Trey Burhow because he stood in that corner and attracted a defender. The games I did the last couple of years, those opposing coaches were really concerned about taking a guy like Burhow out of the game. So that element is missing. Hopefully somebody can step up and really fill those shoes. I look for Nate Heise to have a really big year for the Panthers.
I'm really excited about Heise taking more of a role on the offensive side of the floor. Obviously, we've seen what Bowen Bourne can do. Titan Anderson there too. For me, and I Harry Schroeder, he addressed it in his preview for the season, and he thinks that probably around 4th is where the team will finish with Phyfe. Versus without Phyfe, it'll be a mix-up. And one thing that has always stood out to me, I mentioned it a few times here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk, about the way other teams view Phyfe is I was talking with an assistant at the MVC tournament this last season. He said, 2019, we were almost more worried about Austin Phyfe than we were about AJ Green.
Well, you think about the league, Gage Prim is gone. Of course, Loyola has left the league also. So there aren't a lot of what we call, true 5-men or centers in this league this year. Bradley has a really good one in Rink Mass. I put him on a preseason first team vote, but he can score in a block, but also a 3-point shooter. But just for power inside, where you have to send a second defender, which immediately distorts your defense. Austin Phyfe is a guy that does put some fear in other coaches because, we know that Northern Iowa, if you look at their stats, they love that three ball. I used to say they kind of play outside in, and that would certainly help if Phyfe is healthy. And you never question Father Harry because he's got God on his side. But I think that's a pretty good analogy or estimate that with Phyfe, I'd probably put him about fourth place. But after that, if he's not there, you got a lot of new faces in there inside for the Panthers, and they got to find a way to create some points because the loss through graduation and AJ Green departing to the NBA.
And that was the big question for me today is where are those points going to come from? Where's that offensive production going to come from? And it wasn't just from Coach Jake. It was from the guys too. It appears that it's going to be Heisey, Bowen Bourne, Titan Anderson. Those have been the three names that came up to you when you were thinking of who would replace that type of production.
Well, those guys are most experienced, and I've heard them talk a lot about Michael Duax has really played well. Logan Wolf has shot the ball extremely well, but those guys are unproven freshmen. I asked Duax, what was the biggest adjustment from high school to last year? And he said, well, I had to learn to slow down. And he ran the point guard on the scout team because of some injuries. And I said, well, you weren't even in a real game yet, so it's going to really speed up when this thing becomes real. But he's got the physical body. Let's see if he can give them that extra scoring punch. I think he's going to see a team that's got some great balance in scoring, spread around. Anderson's got to really be a factor for them. I'd say like 15 feet it in and create some offense with his defense. But we know that Heisey and Bourne are proven scorers in the Valley.
I'm really, really looking forward to seeing more of Titan Anderson this season. And I think Panther fans are too. Of course, it was about 5 to 12 minutes a game last season. He's sort of that spark plug. What do you want to see from him this season to really prove that he has those tools that he needs to score? Or what do you think he needed to add to his game this offseason? Or what do you think we will see that he will bring to the team this year that maybe we didn't see last year, especially on the offensive side of the floor?
Well, Tyson's a high-energy guy, and I always say, he gets from point A to B as fast as anyone I've seen since Wes Washburn to play for the Panthers. He can really move laterally. I think that with the increased playing time, you're going to see increased production in scoring. We saw him do it in spurts last year, and he was dynamic in the defensive end in creating some open court opportunities. So hopefully that will continue. He looks bigger and stronger. I mean, I asked him if he grew today, but he said no. What everyone's asking him if he's grown an inch, but certainly you can see the definition of his upper body. Now it's a matter of some confidence. And one of the things you have when you move up from being the 8th or 9th man like he was last year in that starting spot, and the guys really leaned on, is you can play a little freely and play through some mistakes. Hopefully that will expand his game because you're not looking over your shoulder. Going to get pulled if you take a bad shot or make a bad decision. He's got to be able to play through that. And sometimes you'll see some players really be able to grab that and take the next step. And I think that's what we're all expecting out of Titan Anderson this season.
And those three names are the guys that Coach Jake says are definitively going to be starters going into the season. And then, of course, Phyfe, where that'll play itself out. But who do you think will be essentially – all the guards kind of are combo guards essentially in the UNI system, right? They all play off ball, play on ball. It's a mixture of things, but who do you think are going to be in those other two spots for the Panthers on night one?
Well, I think the guy we mentioned earlier, Michael Duax, what I've seen from practice, what I've talked to the coach about, I think he's going to be slotted in there. And I think you'll probably see Cole Henry maybe start that 5 spot, but Betts gives him a different look because he can shoot threes. He may be more of what you've seen last year with Noah Carter as that hybrid 5 where he'll spread the floor, and that obviously opens up those baseline cuts that they like so much and spread the defense out a little bit. So I think Betts is going to play a bigger part than he has certainly in the past for this Panther team. And I think off the bench, the freshman Trey Campbell, I'm hearing really good things about him. I think he's going to be in that lineup. Logan Wolf, that I mentioned earlier, they've mentioned his ability to shoot the basketball. So I think that's, if you look at maybe the 8 or 9 man rotation, that's what I jotted down today when we set that press conference.
I heard the name Derek Krogman, and I was a little surprised, to tell you the truth. The walk on getting his name mixed in there, and just the fact that he's been on the bench for a good amount of time. I genuinely don't know what he brings to the table. Since you've been to practice, what have you seen from Krogs?
Well, they're talking about him as another 5-man.
Right.
To play in that 5 spot. And I know what they like that offense that Seth Tuttle has implemented, his ability to pass from that high post area, which is one of things Cole Henry does too. And I think Krogman can also do that. And he's got some physical presence to him. He isn't real tall, but he's got some toughness to them. And when I watched him, this team was really good defensively. We've seen that from Jacobson's teams in the past. But, when he kind of went away and really sped up offense, I look for this year's team to have a little slower pace, be more focused at the defensive end. Concern I have is, you get in a shot clock situations. Obviously, it's probably going to go in Bowen Bourne's hands, and he's going to create something. That's a lot different we saw last year with AJ Green. So that's a tough role because that shot clock's been limited to 30 seconds. You see those situations more and more that you got to be able to play into those final seconds of the shot clock and be able to execute.
Now, I guess we've addressed it in these last few questions. I asked Coach Jake if his offensive system would be different at all this season, given that Green isn't going to be a part of it, and obviously such a huge talent going to the NBA. Were you surprised to hear him say that the base offense is going to remain similar with Green and Noah Carter moving on?
No, not the base offense. But I think the pace of play is probably going to change a little bit because with Green they really tried to get more possessions. I don't think this team's going to be a high possession team, but what they run offensively, I think you'll see some of the same type what they call the flow offense, but maybe more sets in there to try to get specific people shots and so forth. What I want to see what they do defensively, if they try to create more with their defense, because they've run that pack line defense. It's been really solid, but it hasn't created a lot of turnovers and scoring opportunities for this team. And the other thing that they've done, the Panthers in the past, is they've sent 3 people to the offensive glass, which is something. If you go back to the Bennett Cook days, they were sending one guy and they didn't want to give up anything in transition. The last couple of years, they've sent almost sometimes 3 players to the offensive glass. I look for them to do that again because you got to create some second chance opportunities if you're not going to create some points off your defense.
Another new name that we haven't really hit yet, Coach Jake talked about a little bit. I got to talk to him a decent amount. Is Ege Peksari coming in all the way from Turkey. And I asked him, how different is the game here versus in Turkey? He said completely different. One thing that I also have gathered in the little bit that I've been able to watch Ege is the kid has eyes in the back of his head. Those passes. What are your impressions of Ege, and do you think he'll see the floor much this season?
Yeah, when I was going down that lineup, that's the one guy I forgot. I think he's going to be in that rotation because his ability to make plays. It's a different lifestyle over there, and I talked to him quite a bit to Iggy today about that. He played with older guys. He was a soccer player. He said until he was 12. Then he got involved in basketball. Then he got invited with a club team, and you're playing against grown men. In fact, one story, Elliot, he told me he was playing against a guy that was older than his father.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean they're immediately indoctrinated, thrown to the wolves, so to speak. And those old guys kind of teach you some of the tricks of the trade. Now, so offensively, and they really teach. There's less off the bounce in Europe, and there's more passing. So where we see all those ball screens here in college basketball, there's less of that overseas. There's a lot of high ball screens, but then they start to chain. The ball really flies around to get the open shooter, and it's a little bit what we've seen in the new wave college basketball. It's a lot of threes and a lot of scoring at the rim. But his ability, I saw the same thing you saw. He can really find open people. He can drive the opposite weak side of the floor and throw the ball back behind his head and make plays for people. And I think with that spread offense that the Panthers are using, this is a guy, Iggy, that's going to be fit very well in what they're trying to do.
The first thing I said to him today was, we have to break the controversy. How do we pronounce your first name? And he handled it really well. He was like, how do you think? He's been really fun to talk with so far. But last thing we'll talk about here, specifically with UNI basketball, before we transition a little bit into MVC as a whole, is Duax is a guy that you've talked about a decent amount here this evening. I know it's a guy that the Panther fan base is really excited about. And when I was talking with Nate Heisey today, I asked him if he'd still be that primary defensive guy. He told me, yeah, and did a phenomenal job of it last year. And I asked him in regards to Taiwan was sort of the other guy that was known for the defense, right? On the team last season. Who's going to be that guy this season? And he said it was Michael Duax. To me, what I think the difference is for Duax, as to not that the other guys don't necessarily have this, but just the sheer athleticism that Duax possesses, and of course that wingspan. And what do you see there? Do you see him being that guy on the defensive side too?
He certainly looks the part. I mean, big physical, big shoulders, really cut, and very active, can move laterally, got good hands and feet. So yeah, I can see that. And Nate Heisey is one of those guys who he's a lockdown defender. Duax kind of looks like he has some of those same attributes physically. Now I haven't watched him. Where you get interesting is that defense. Once a team distorts you, your ability to scramble out of that and match up especially on shooters. And that's one of the things that Ben Jacobson's team has been very good at. They drill on it all the time to fake their double teams and get back in position. How they come out of double teams, whether they double a post with another post, double with a perimeter player. They have a lot of different things. And whenever I have a game with Coach Jake, that's always one of the questions. What are you going to do in the post? And his answer is always the same. We'll change it up. They'll do it from a number of ways. They'll double from the baseline side. They'll send a perimeter player from the same side wing that the pass is made to, and they'll send a guy from a weak side. So they kind of keep you guessing in that area. So you've got to be really mentally sharp if you're going to play in the Ben Jacobson system. So, you got to have some basketball IQ. I think that's one of the reasons why Heisey was so good at it. And he told me today, too, that Nate Heisey, his sister was named the best hockey player in the world, I believe.
I didn't know in the world.
Yeah, she's like big time. Wow. She is, plays for the Gophers, going to be a senior this year because we've kind of always followed her career. And I asked him, how did he get away from hockey? And this is one of those things he gravitated to as a little younger age.
Sure. So one more thing, my mistake about the UNI team that I wanted to address, maybe not the team specifically, but the schedule going into this season. Coach Jake said 7 of those 10 non-conference games are against teams that were in the top 100 in the net or finished in the top 100 in the net. What do you think of that schedule? I mean, I don't know that it could necessarily be better.
Well, they've done it the last couple of years. If you look at last year's schedule too, they had that game at Richmond with home. They had I think it was in Jackson State. Yeah. And here's what he's doing. He's going to always play a team like Arkansas. This year's Virginia on the road. And basically that's to really prepare you and find out what your weaknesses are. But what they've done, the home scheduling, I really give them kudos because you see a lot of the Valley teams are not scheduling strong. They're non-conference. And that's one of the beefs we've had is, this is their transition year for the Valley. Belmont coming in, Murray State coming in, teams with great tradition. Can the Valley be a multiple bid league? And I think this is a big year for that. But what they've got to get more teams to schedule aggressively like the Panthers are doing. Back in the day, and I'm going to age myself here, Elliot, when I coached, of course, I coached Austin Phyfe's father. That's how old I am. But we had a real luxury that we had home and homes with Iowa. We had a home and home with Iowa State, and we even had a 4-year home and home series with Nebraska. So every other year we had 2 of the Power Fives coming into the Dome at that time before the McLeod Center. Doesn't happen anymore with the Big Ten going to 20-game schedule. Even the Big Four Classic went away. So and that's one of the reasons why I asked Coach Jake about the 20-game league schedule. Has taken some pressure off the non-conference scheduling of Valley teams because it's hard to get. Remember back in North Carolina came in with Marcus Page and got beat. I mean, once that happened, no one was coming to McLeod Center to play the Panthers.
Yeah, for good reason. So again, Kevin Lehman joining us today here on Corn Stalks and Sports Talk. So transition more to the MVC as a whole. The preseason awards, I believe they'll be announced on Wednesday, which That's of course the preseason rankings, preseason awards, etc. Who are your top 4 or 5 teams in the conference this season? Who do you believe will very well have a chance to win this thing this year?
Well, I go on a Valley tour, so I've seen tomorrow. I'm going to see Missouri State. I'll be my 9th team of the 12 teams that I've seen practice, and obviously, owners pointing toward Drake because of what they return. I mean, this is an old team. They got DJ Wilkins will turn 25 before the season starts. He's going to be a quarter century old. And you've got Penn and Sturts. Those guys are 24 years old. So they're a team that has got the age. We know in the Valley, 2 things win for you. It's you got to grow old and you got to have great guard play. Now, I also say when I was down to watch them play, Rowan Pinsel had a boot on from his broken foot in the surgery. They got Sturts, and they've got what I think is the best player in the league in Tucker DeVries, Darren's son. And here's the scary part. Darnell Brody he dropped about 10 pounds. He looked really good. It was very active for the Bulldogs. So if he is in shape, there's a force in the middle that they're missing. They need their transfer Calhoun, who came in from Texas Tech. He's kind of the Hemphill version, real athletic guy. If he comes on and kind of finds his way, they're going to be really not only in the Valley, but a team that's going to be recognized nationally. I really like the pieces that they have put together. They're going to miss Tremel Murphy. He was their enforcer. They need every team at the top needs a tough guy. I'm not sure who their tough guy is going to be yet. But after that, I had a toss-up between Bradley and Southern because Bradley is loaded in the front court. Rank Mass coming back. Leons, who came as a JUCO last year, it looks much better. And the big boost they have is Jashawn Henry, who was out most of last season with a concussion, he's back and decided to come back for that extra year. They have an excellent front line. Their point guard position is going to be new with Terry Robbins transferring to Georgia. They got a Dean Dukes from Troy. He's a little guy, but he's a jet. And Southern, I was impressed by too. They are loaded in the backcourt. Juwan Newton transferred from Evansville. They have a point guard, Xavier Johnson, a transfer from George Mason, probably be a starting point guard. And of course, you got Lance Jones and Marcus Damas back. So that's a really solid team. But my sleeper at number 4 is Indiana State. They're going to surprise some people.
Really? Okay, tell me more.
Well, they got Xavier Bledson coming back. They've got Cooper Neese back. And they went to the Division II ranks and got a player out of Truman State that was player of the year in that league. I have to pull my notes out to see his name, but he's a big that he's kind of what I call the poor man's Krutwig. Plays below the rim, soft hands, can score left, right, but can make threes. And they're a team that plays a different style. They like that 3 ball. When I was at the practice, they chart threes and they chart baskets at the rim. They don't like contested 2s. It's kind of what we're seeing in the NBA. A huge NBA influence there. So I think that's going to be a really difficult team to guard. And I think their style of play is going to be a real breath of fresh air in this Valley.
You mentioned Tucker DeVries being the best player in the MVC. Is he going to win that Larry Bird trophy this year? Is he your prediction?
I tell you what, if he stays healthy, I mean, he was so impressive as a freshman. I had that game at Loyola where they're up, a point with about a minute 20 left, and he hit a deep NBA 3 at Loyola. Now, freshmen just don't do that. But here's the difference this year. Last year he deferred to all those older guys. This is his team. You can tell when you walk into practice that he is the man. They know it. He knows it. And that's going to really give him that huge bit of confidence to go from that freshman year to that sophomore year. So what I've seen, he's the best player in the league.
Similarities with him and AJ Green are eerie going into this sophomore year. Lots of talent on that Drake team. I don't have a vote, but they would be my pick to win the MVC. Like you mentioned, 25 years old. Oh my gosh, that's insane. And then,
well, the joke is some of those guys will be collecting Social Security benefits before they get done. Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned Sardar Calhoun is a guy that I'm really excited to see what he brings as well. Last thing for you, Kevin, before we let you go. How excited are you about these additions of Belmont and Murray State? Obviously, UIC, the MVC stays in that Chicago market. How excited are you? Because these are nationally acclaimed basketball programs. Murray State always among the best in the country.
Well, Elliot, I tell you what, we lose a team that was in the Final Four a few years ago. We're in the Sweet 16 2 years ago. but the league is better. And that's a strange thing to say, but when you add the pedigrees of Belmont and Murray State, those are teams that are traditionally with high nets. They've battled out the Ohio Valley for years, and I did the Ohio Valley package the last couple of years, so I got to see those teams up close. Now, unfortunately for them this year, especially Murray State, of his 14 roster players, he's got one returning starter who averages about 6 a game, and he's got a returning walk-on. The other 12 are new guys, so they're a mix of transfers, JUCOs, and youngsters. He's got some really good-looking freshmen. And this is, Steve Prohm, the ex-coach at Iowa State that was there before. And here's the thing about Murray State. Look at their history. Point guard John Morant has come out of there. Cameron Payne has come out of there. Isaiah Cannon. They have found players in those small towns in the South and put them in the NBA. So we look for that to continue. It's been also a hotbed for coaches. Mick Cronin got his start there, and there's a whole number of other coaches that have come through there. And Belmont, Nashville's a beautiful city, as we know. They have a gorgeous campus. And Corey Alexander, this is his, I think, starting his 3rd year. And Coach Bird had been there for like 25 years, and he played there. He was an assistant there, went to Liskin as a head coach and came back. So that's been a seamless transfer for them. But they've graduated a couple of players that are really successful. Ben Shepherd comes back for him. But, I just think that adds so much to the Valley. Murray State's going to be amazing when you go down there because it's 9,000 people in that arena, and it is packed. Belmont, beautiful city in Nashville. It adds so much. And, of course, UIC, we always talk about you got to stay in the Chicago market because so many of the Valley teams recruit in that area. And as Ben Jacobs said today, they could be the sleeping giant like Loyola was when they joined years ago.
Kevin, great stuff as always. Really appreciate you. We're definitely going to have to get you on throughout the basketball season if you can withstand it amid all the other appearances you make.
I got to ask you, how'd you get the name Cornstalks
and Sports Talk?
Sports Talk?
It's an Iowa-based sports show, and it's not just the Iowa Hawkeyes. So I do talk about Iowa State as well, and so that's kind of I wanted to allude to the fact that it's about Iowa, but not say Iowa. So
Elliot, I grew up on a farm, and I still got 4 brothers that are on the farm, so I really appreciate that name, the Cornstalks.
Hey, no ag talk here from me. Just sports talk. Again, he is Kevin Lehman. Great stuff as always. Go follow him on Twitter. It's at @KLehmanSports. Kevin, we'll definitely talk again.
All right. Thanks, Elliot.